Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into the TrapDraw podcast. This is a special episode today. Of course, my name is Randy. I am joined by my associate, Tron Carter. Listen, you guys know we spend a lot of time talking about airlines and travel, and we get into infrastructure projects, and we mess around with some big issues, and we make light of some stuff. Well, we never really know what we're talking about, and so we figured we'd bring in somebody that does know what they're talking about. And so we're very pleased to welcome former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg to the show today. This is a real thrill for us. We're going to ask him all these airline questions that we normally spend time bantering about. So Pete, welcome to the show. It's great to have you. In your life, did you ever think you'd be on the TrapDraw?
No, this is a new bucket list item checked off. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for being on the show. As we always do, we need to shout out our guy, Mr. Jeezy. Thank you, Mr. Jeezy. We also want to shout out our title sponsor, that is our good friends from ServPro. ServPro with over 2,200 locations nationwide, making any disaster like it never even happened. TC, any quick mea culpas you need to get off your chest before we dive into our conversation here?
A couple. We had our member guest at my club here in Florida this weekend, and my golf was a disaster. Me and my partner both, and it was just want to apologize for everybody who had to play with us this weekend. And then I'm told, got a couple DMs. I'm told I keep pronouncing empanada wrong. It's empanada, not empanada. So I need to empanada. There's no like squiggly line above the N. So apologies for that. And then the Dallas rapper Big X the Plug, I think I called him BX the Plug. So apologies to everybody down in the Metroplex for that one as well. But there we have it.
Well, thank you. People will rest easy with those out in the open now. Thank you, of course, to ServPro. You can visit them, servpro.com or 1-800-ServPro. Pete, like I said, thank you so much for coming on here. There are some what I would call more important topics we want to get into, but I think we just start right here. Let's get this out of the way. We need to power rank, like, what are your top 5 American airports? Let's go 5 to 1, 1 being your favorite. Where do we stand right now?
Look, I know that not a lot of folks will get this, but my first and only love with airports is O'Hare. There's just something about it. I get that it's not, it's bolted on one piece at a time. One piece doesn't match another. It takes a little bit of effort or a little bit of savvy to get around the place, but I just love it. I proposed to Chasten in O'Hare outside of gate B5. I feel like it's the one airport where I know, like, gate by gate, concourse by concourse, like, if I have this many minutes and I'm in the mood for that kind of food, I know what to do. So definitely O'Hare. LaGuardia has shot up the list. I mean, we all know what it used to be like to go through LaGuardia. And for people who think just everything sucks and nothing ever gets better, look at LaGuardia, right?
Yeah.
And I think maybe because they opened it in the winter of 2021, so it was too late for one administration to take credit, and the new administration kind of didn't get around to taking credit for it either because it had just happened and they had other stuff going on. So nobody really like blew a trumpet when it opened. Like, it just happened. Very high class problem. But when I was in the cabinet, the protocol, that was one of the airports where I would just get right off the plane on the tarmac and drive off. So I didn't really start experiencing the terminal until this year. When I started traveling like a normal person again. And I just think it's incredible. Yeah, you gotta walk a long way through that sky thing, but you don't feel like you're in a tunnel or a tube because there's all those little rest. The only thing I'm worried about there is the ampersand proliferation. I don't know if you've noticed that, like, so many places in airports, the name of the place is like whatever, like it'll be like name ampersand another name, or it'll be like item ampersand another. It'll be like pepper and broccoli, or like I don't know, Sloan and Garfield. I just like, and there's like one spot there where you can see 2 ampersands at once in both directions. I'm just like worried about the encroachment of the ampersands, but generally very, very big fan of what they've done with LaGuardia. And then I love the smaller airports. Obviously, very very attached to South Bend, very attached to Traverse City, Cherry Capital Airport, where I live. It's the official name of the airport is Cherry Capital Airport. That's how important it is to the community to assert that it is the cherry capital of the world. And it's just this.
There was a big cherry scandal like over the last couple of years, right? Where I think some of the local quote unquote cherry producers were actually importing their cherries from Turkey,
Oh, we don't talk about that. Yeah.
Okay.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's a different podcast.
No, I'll tell you the problem actually is that in order to make the most of the tourist season, they had to move the cherry festival out of the local cherry season. So all the locals get the very best like local cherries after the cherry festival. But there's great cherries to be had during the cherry festival as well. And then that's 4. Look, obviously, a lot of the best airports are not in the United States. When I was in office, we did what we could to change that. But around the world, there's so many incredible airports that should tell. Oh, one more I should mention that I think is at the standard that if you were in East Asia, you wouldn't be embarrassed by is Indianapolis. It's just like a good, functional, nice airport.
I agree. I love Indianapolis. I think the going back to O'Hare, I really have a soft spot for O'Hare as well. Whether it's the kind of the color, like the changing colors with the tiles along the
between B and C.
Yeah. Or I love the Rick Bayless restaurant in there.
Yeah, Tortoise place.
Tortoise, and then
down
the only thing it gets a little bleak out at F, where the like the old Northwest gates that I think is kind of a hodgepodge now. And then also I wish there were more hot dog stands in there because I don't know, like when I'm traveling through Chicago, I want a Chicago style hot dog, and they're too few and far between.
Yeah, you're right. They've been losing ground. I think they've gone big on this popcorn thing and some of the other things that are supposed to be the local touch. But you're right. I mean, it's Chicago. You got to have the hot dog available. It's there, but like you have to go out of your way.
You got to search for it. And then are you bullish on, because they're basically building like 2 new airports at O'Hare. They're building like a One World and then a Star Alliance. Are you bullish on?
I just want them to get it done, because when I, especially if I fly from Traverse City, where we live in northern Michigan, you'll be in the air for like 35 or 40 minutes, and then you'll taxi for 40 or 45 minutes. And I get it. Like I used to, work on this stuff all the time. Like you got to get through the short-term pain to get the project done. But it is, it's kind of brutal to have to spend that much time taxiing around all the construction. But there was a lot of challenges with the city, the airport authority, and the different airlines agreeing who was going to pay for what. I'm just happy that they're in motion, and like no plan is going to be perfect, but it's the same as a workout. Like the best workout is the one you actually do. And I'm glad that they arrived at something that they're actually, turning dirt on right now. Because, as big as O'Hare is and as much work has been done there, they need to expand their capacity, and they need to just modernize the shape of that airport.
What does that look like, that process from a federal perspective versus local, and just how to, obviously a lot of stakeholders between the airlines, the FAA, the, state government, city government, all of that. Like how much wherewithal did you have as transportation secretary amongst all that?
So because we had the big infrastructure bill pass, that was the first year that I was secretary, we got to do a lot more than most. I think probably more than any of my predecessors when it came to airport terminals. But folks should understand that's not where all or even most of the money comes from. A lot of it is the facility charges. You might not even see them, but that little extra, maybe not so little extra thing that goes on your ticket goes into a fund. That's then how they finance a lot of those improvements. The question is when you exhaust all of those funds and you still need more, what do you do? And that's why we set up this airport terminal program. And it was everything from, 50 million at a time going to these big projects in Atlanta or LAX or Dallas, usually very unsexy stuff like redoing their power plant or redoing the road that goes in. But all the way down to these small projects at small airports that mean everything to those places that do them. One of my favorites was in Chamberlain, South Dakota. This is a community, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people. And the part of the reason they have an airport, which is of course a small general aviation airport. One reason is pheasant hunting brings a lot of people in during a certain time of year. But the deeply important reason is that they're pretty far from the nearest trauma center hospital. And so the medevac flights, the air ambulance, maybe they only needed a couple hundred times a year, but that means almost every day somebody in that region is counting on that air ambulance. And their general aviation terminal was basically a double wide. I mean, it was a kind of souped up mobile home from the 80s. And we were able to use the same set of funds that was doing these, 50 million or more to the big airports. Did a 6-figure grant, like less than $1 million, that made it possible for them to finally get an actual building, like a proper building that they deserved in this South Dakota community. And I went out and I saw these guys have been working on getting that done in the county for years and years, and just never were able to get it done without the federal funding. So, I guess what I'm saying is federal grant funding isn't the only thing or even the biggest thing that gets airports built, but it can make a big difference. And it's why I really loved working on that part of the portfolio.
I mean, we got to ask you about, like, what's the airport you just dread, either if it's a connection or you're flying into or out of it? Is there one airport that's like, oh God, I got to fly through this place?
I mean, look, that's definitely how LaGuardia used to be, right? You just know that even if it's on time, you're just going through that like terminal that was so brutal. So I think that's part of why I'm so excited about LaGuardia. Like, there are other gleaming new airports around Kansas City and other places that are fantastic. But that one, because we all remember what it replaced, that one was pretty rough. But no, I don't know that I have like a airport I like just don't want to be in.
That's
Dulles.
Tron,
what's your Dulles? Is that your?
I mean, Dulles is up there.
You got Dulles. Yeah.
Yeah,
Dulles.
Newark used to be that way. Newark's making strides.
I think the terminal experience at Newark is great. Obviously,
the
the big problem is the delays, right? Which we worked on. I think my successor is working on, and that's a real challenge. And we could get into everything that went into that. But the terminal itself now, mostly, really, really positive experience. Dulles. Now, one thing that's made Dulles better is it's more connected to the city now, because the Silver Line Metro used to have to take the Metro all the way out to the end of the line and then take a bus, and then you're in Dulles, and then it takes forever to get to your plane. But obviously Dulles is due for a
I think those buildings were temporary with C&D. Like, those were supposed to be 5
They
or
have that
6
feel
year,
for sure. Yeah,
like,
I don't know all
kind
the
of
ins and outs of it.
stoppers. Yeah.
But you know what? I think it's important that somewhere in the world we have those people movers, those like combination elevator bus things. It's just important that
mobile
they
lounges.
exist. Mobile lounge, I forgot. That's what they call them. Yeah.
There were rumors that they were going to get rid of them, and they
I think there was an outcry. Yeah. To be clear, that was not an official policy position. I didn't put my thumb on the scale for that when I was in office or anything. But I think it's important that they exist. It's just, you don't always want to feel like being in one.
Yeah, Randy's out in Denver, and he's going through all those renovations right now. With Denver, did you have to deal with the Illuminati as far as getting that stuff?
They never weighed in on the proposed rulemaking or showed up at any of the hearings. So whatever they were doing, I have my questions about the big blue horse and all that stuff at Denver. But
Blucifer,
Blucifer, that's right. Yeah, somebody gave me Blucifer socks, which are one of the few things I was given when I was secretary that I actually kept, because they're under the federal gift limit. But I can't figure out the occasion to wear them.
Well, maybe we turn to I think a more serious topic, and that is Tron. Should we go in and ask Pete about the air traffic controller situation currently in the United States? And I think it's something that we've kind of touched on. We've highlighted some various stories over the last several months here on this show. But I guess, Pete, let's start here. Like, what, in your opinion, and I know you're out of government at the moment, but as far as like through your administration and your understanding now, can you kind of level set where we are in this country with air traffic controllers? And I guess, in your opinion, is there a problem? Is there a crisis? And kind of what is that for the folks listening, if there is?
So air traffic controllers have this obviously incredibly important job. The system depends on them. There's zero margin for error, and it's rightly a very hard job to qualify for. And the fundamental problem with our air traffic control workforce has been that there have not been enough of them. So if you start the clock 20 or 30 years ago, you will see that the number went down and down and down for years, for decades, really. And one of our top priorities when I was at the Department of Transportation was to change that. And we did. We got that line on that chart that was going down and down and down to finally start going up. There was more to do. When I left, like, we needed that number to keep going up. But obviously, it can take a year or even 2 years to qualify. And the one thing you can't do, of all the things you try to do to get more air traffic controllers into the workforce, the one thing you can never do is lower the standard, because it is very important that very, very high qualification standard stay there. So what we did do is things like reaching out to more people to encourage them to consider applying. We changed the application windows, so there wasn't just one. It's kind of like open enrollment for healthcare. You could only apply one time of the year. We broke that up and turned it into 2. We had partnerships with universities so that if the Air Traffic Control Academy was full, we could supplement that at the same standard. And it was working. Like, we saw the numbers start to go up. No one can tell me if the number is going up or down right now. So I don't want to get too political, but when the new administration came in, this email went out to all the air traffic controllers, because they were federal workers, saying maybe you should go work in the private sector. Then they said, actually, that doesn't apply to controllers. They're not part of that buyout. But I just haven't seen any numbers, frankly, on whether the air traffic control workforce is still growing the way it was when we left, or whether it's shrinking right now. I hope that it is growing, because we need more people to be able to do that job. If we don't, then what happens is the people who do have the job obviously are being asked to work more and more hours. Again, there are some safety checks in terms of the breaks they have to take and the downtime they have to get. So I don't want you to think there's people like, working 48 hours straight in a tower, but it adds up. It puts stress on the workforce. It's a problem. So got to get more air traffic controllers, got to get better equipment. If you go into these facilities, some of the equipment looks like it's from another era, and all kinds of reasons how that came to be the way it was. We went to Congress asking for more funds. It was one of those times when Congress just won't pass a budget at all. So we wait a long time for that. But now that they've passed a budget, it actually has good dollars in there for trying to upgrade the equipment, which I am cautiously hopeful is going to have an impact. And then the third thing is the infrastructure. So there's the people, there's the technology, and there's just kind of the bigger airport infrastructure, making sure that it sets up the system and the controllers for success. And that we were able to get a lot done through those infrastructure dollars, but there's always more.
Did you find when you were trying to change the direction of, as you said, the overall trend was you were losing air traffic controllers, and to flip that, did you find the biggest issue, like, does it just come down to, hey, we might need to offer better pay, or is it like we need to make more people aware that this is a viable career path for them? How would you kind of weigh what the issue was getting more people into the candidate pool, I guess?
So the pay and benefits are quite strong, and deservedly so. I mean, if you were a highly experienced air traffic controller in one of the busiest centers, you would be making definitely substantially more than I was making as the Secretary of Transportation. And obviously, you want these folks to be well compensated. But I think keeping that strong is really important. I do think just recruiting more, making sure people see that this could be a career for them, and then making sure that recruiting pipeline is strong. COVID obviously was a real problem for that, because you can't zoom in to work at an air traffic control tower. But the training is largely on the job. That was disrupted very badly. But creating kind of a wider pipe for people to go through without changing the standard, that's part of what we worked on, and what I hope my successor will work on too, because those partnerships with colleges and universities can really supplement the excellent work that was going on at the academy. I think showing more regard for the profession. I don't think a lot of people think about the controllers as much, because you don't see them, right? You see the flight attendant, you see the pilot, you see the ground crews. You don't see the controllers, but without them, nothing works.
Was it like readily apparent right from the jump that, hey, we've got a problem here, this is something we need to turn around, or was it something that kind of manifested?
I'd say you really saw it kind of late in the first and into the second year. Because remember, when we got there, the big question around airlines was, is the U.S. airline sector going to go out of business? And we forget how much whiplash there was. It took federal money to keep the airlines alive. No one was flying. The numbers of flights had collapsed. And so for a minute, there was a bunch of slack in the system. And then suddenly it was the opposite. It was revenge travel, right? All of us traveling as much as we could. And then the airlines couldn't keep up. Then we had to put a lot of pressure on the airlines to make sure they were staffing the right way because they had let too many people go and they couldn't service the routes that they were selling. The airlines seemed to be the long pole in the tent there, but pretty quickly you could tell that the second biggest factor that we was really affecting on-time performance after the airlines and after weather, of course, was going to be what was going on in the system. And that's where we took a harder look. Okay, what's it going to take to have enough controllers? And we saw that the number was just something like 3,000 short of where we wanted it. And again, you can't snap your fingers and get 3,000 controllers because you don't just have to qualify generically to be a controller. You have to qualify in the specific airspace you're working. It's kind of like being a harbor pilot where you've got to know your harbor and where every rock is and where every buoy is and where every hazard is. There's something like that for the controllers too. So we knew we couldn't do it overnight, but I'm really proud that we inherited a workforce that was shrinking and I was able to hand my successor a workforce that was growing.
How long do you think assuming there's positive momentum, like, is it something that feels like a doom loop a little bit of like, all right, we're in this 5 or 6 year window where we know, these trainees aren't fully up and running yet. We've kind of arrested the problem, but it's going to take some time to get it fixed into the next decade.
I think best case scenario, most of that lift can be done this decade. And you want kind of the reverse of the doom loop, right? The doom loop is more people leave. There's that much more stress on the people who are there and then they leave. The reverse of that is more people come in. You're not getting pushed to take on so much overtime if you're there. And so fewer people decide to leave. And if you're having less attrition and more hiring, everybody at the same high standard, then I think actually the job actually gets easier as you go. And that's what we tried to do. It was a flywheel kind of effect for sure. So I think we can expect, even now, I think we're seeing some of the work we did pay off. And this is one of, I have some very strong political views about how the current administration is handling things. But this is one where I'm absolutely rooting for the department and my successor to do well because it's important to America and because I fly all the time, right? I mean, we're all in this together. And I think one thing that's really important is just to come at this, that policymakers come at this first and foremost as members of the traveling public.
It seems tough too, where some of all the controllers coming out of the academy are basically, they don't get to choose where they go, right? Like they get assigned to a market or to a center, right? And so and then like some of that was related to like the Philly or the Newark control went down to Philly for a while there. Yeah.
What happened there was there were several airspaces that were being run out of the same facility. And the staffing there was getting down below 60%. 80% you can handle. It gets below 60, and that's absolutely going to have a major effect on time performance. And so the solution that had been proposed for a long time was to reposition the controllers working that airspace from a facility in Long Island that was having these low staffing numbers to a facility in Philly where they were likely to be better set up for success and get them the equipment and everything that they needed. So
lower cost of life for salaries and stuff.
Yeah, I think so. But there were also bonuses that were offered to the workers who were considering changing locations. So that cutover happened. Takes a while. It's definitely one of those kind of like road construction. It's going to get worse before it gets better. I think we're in the getting better phase. But I'm on the outside looking in, so I don't know as much about how it's going. I definitely feel like it was the right thing to do. The politics around it were kind of tough, but I think it was the right thing to do.
And then Newark's just kind of a bear to begin with too, because you've got I think one or two runways were down. They're parallel run. Like it's just a small airport to begin with. Right?
And we're talking about some of the most complicated airspace in the world. Remember, it's a hardworking airport itself, the airfield, the runway, but also just the space around it. You got JFK, LaGuardia, Newark, all of these smaller airports. Literally, the world has very few, if any, airspaces that are more complicated than that.
Folks, real quick, let me interrupt this conversation to thank another sponsor, and that is Stone Creek Coffee. This is a big day for the TrapDraw, where every week is Infrastructure Week. This is also a big day for pronunciations. We may have a few mea culpas after this. Tron, he never made it this far in his dreams, a true perfect storm. And while we're all thrilled to hear from Mayor Pete, the folks over at Stone Creek Coffee feel the burn on your behalf as they source, import, and roast the finest coffees from around the world. And while there's still a lot of work ahead if we want to win the era, you can start winning your mornings by making sure your cabinet is well stocked. Now, we know we're speaking to a lot of future former Starbucks drinkers out there, so let's give you some real tangible reasons to make the switch to Stone Creek Coffee. Stone Creek is a small shop. They're independently owned, no private equity games, no McKinsey consultants pulling strings behind the curtain. Stone Creek is also a certified B Corporation, a for-profit business committed to creating positive impact for its community, its employees, and the planet, something Mayor Pete, the democratic capitalist himself, could probably get behind. And most importantly, the coffee is damn good. We're talking about downright electable flavor. All the passion and dedication that goes into company infrastructure also goes into the beans, sourced directly from farms around the world, roasted with intention, and delivered with care. When you buy Stone Creek, you know every step of the supply chain was done the right way. It's time for a new generation of coffee. Go to stonecreekcoffee.com. Use the code MAYORPETE, all capital letters, one word, MAYORPETE, for 20% off orders over $50 through the end of September. It's the fuel that keeps the country moving, whether you need to boot your way out the front door or edge yourself into caffeinated euphoria. Stone Creek is going to have the perfect coffee for you. Stone Creek Coffee, a fresh start for America. Thank you very much for being a sponsor of the Trap Draw, and our buddy Drew Pond always nails it with the ag coffee. Now back to our conversation. If we want to get beyond the air traffic controller situation, what do you think is one of the biggest issues affecting American air travel still? Is there an issue that you really worked on that either you weren't able to dent as much as you would have liked, or it's just persistent? What, in your mind, what is like a big thing that still affects all of us as travelers?
I think one of the biggest things is the competition or lack thereof, right? So we talked about infrastructure, that's a piece of it, air traffic control for sure, technology for sure. A lot of the work that I did was on passenger protections and passenger rights, right? Making sure you get your money back if the airline doesn't get you what you were promised, making sure that you get taken care of if you're stuck because of an extreme delay or a cancellation, something like that. But in a healthy market, a healthy industry, a lot of that gets taken care of by competition. When they deregulated airlines and kind of launched the system as we now know it, which is something that happened in the 70s and 80s, people were predicting with a lot of confidence that we would wind up with like 100 airlines in the United States, that we'd have like very competitive. And the thought was that there's actually not such a huge cost of capital to get in because, unlike, I don't know, building a supermarket or something, these planes are very mobile and a lot of money goes into them. You can buy or lease the planes. And so the thought was that there was not a big barrier to entry. But that turned out to be incredibly naive because there are huge barriers to entry. There are huge switching costs. That's what frequent flyer programs are, right? They're designed to make it hard to switch airlines. There's the way that the airlines invest in their kind of supremacy at a given hub, right? And so what all of that has led to, and I would argue at certain times the federal watchdog role not being very strong over the years, is that now we're down to a handful of airlines. We don't have 100 airlines. We have basically, Big Four and a few others. And usually when you see anything in the news about industry structure, it's moving in the wrong direction. It's moving from more competition to less, more airlines to less. And you wonder, if this goes on, are we going to be down to Coke and Pepsi? Or is there actually a chance of having competition? So that's something I continue to worry about. And we did what we could. We took a strong stand on one of the proposed mergers. But yeah, I'd be lying if we said we were anywhere close to solving that by the time I left the building.
I was kind of surprised. I think Spirit a couple weeks ago just announced bankruptcy again. At what point? Because they tried to do the Spirit Frontier tie up and the Spirit JetBlue tie up, and you you're pretty adamantly against that. I think at what point does, like, if they're not a going concern, or if they've got kind of the failing firm defense, at what point is a tie-up good?
I'm not fundamentalist about it. I mean, that's why
Yeah.
we actually did, there was a green light for Alaska and Hawaiian because they wanted to kind of needed to come together, but held them to a very high standard. If you're going to do this, we want to see that you're taking these steps to protect passengers all the way down to the frequent flyer programs. So look, there are scenarios where it can make sense. The big question is, at the end of that, are we going to see consumers better off, competition improved, or not? Now, Spirit's got to figure out how to make their business model work, right, in the face of all of the things that that the other major airlines can do, often to box them out. But I don't think there's no reason why it should be impossible in principle for an airline on that business model to work.
Where do you fall out on the frequent flyer miles, and like how much more does that need to be regulated? I guess because it's like at some point we've got basically
too
like
much
banks.
status. People too
Yeah,
much status.
Status,
the
but
clubs
also
are
like
overrun.
evaluation of miles. You've got basically banks that are having to fly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's one airline expert had a whole article saying just airlines are just banks now, and it's become, there's some airlines where the only profitable or the most profitable part of the whole airline is the frequent flyer division, right? Because they can sell the miles to credit cards, and they sell them for real money, right?
Yeah.
So I think most of us who fly a lot and who care a lot about these programs have seen them get a little bit out of control, like all these overlapping credit card offers and the confusion, the devaluation, because it's really currency, right? I mean, people have like a significant amount of their savings. Like people care. I know I do. Like I care how much is in my like points balances. That could be my next vacation, right? So we did a big push when I was there to start scrutinizing. We don't want to like regulate every particular of them, but you've got to make sure there's some accountability, some transparency, especially since unlike a normal currency, it's up to a company that could change its value at any time. And so we started insisting that the airlines provide more information about the value of these things. And it's interesting. Sometimes they'd say, well, there's no real way we could tell you the value of a mile. But then I'm sitting there and I pull out the little card and it says, you can get a sandwich for like $9 or whatever it was, 800 miles. Like they know exactly what the exchange rate is in their mind, right? Or what exchange rate they want you to pay for airline miles versus dollars. But they get really cagey about it if a watchdog like the Department of Transportation shows up asking questions. And look, I think they have a real risk of killing the goose that laid the golden eggs, right? I do see a lot of people thinking, you know what, like the amount of time I spend optimizing these credit card points and matching them to the miles and looking up the redemptions and like laundering my United points through Singapore to turn them into something I can use to buy an iPhone or whatever. That time is worth less than the like whatever 1.5 cents on the dollar I'm getting by playing it all. And I'm just going to use money. I think there's a real risk. And there was a fun to this at one point. Maybe there still is a little bit, but it's not as fun anymore, like dealing with these miles and points, Yeah.
It seems too like there's a, all those miles were basically being used to just fill up seats that would have gone empty or just, balance out the inventory. And now there's just not as much inventory and all the planes are full of paying customers. And, all those redemption rates are insane.
Right. And now you got to pay money to buy an app that'll scan the inventory to tell you when you might actually be able to get a seat with the miles you actually have on the airline you can actually fly. Yeah. They haven't quite completely ruined it, but they're well on their way. I'm worried about it. And again, I say this as somebody who used to geek out on this stuff all the time. Chestnut, I still do. Like we sit there, like a lot of people, like, oh, what's going to happen with the new Amex change, and is it still going to be better than the Chase? And the banks are in on it too. I'm worried about it.
The Amex change. I mean, like I'm almost rooting for that at this point because, I would rather be out in the terminal than be in some of those lounges. They're so crowded.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, and then you start asking yourself, because you can always convince yourself when you want to buy something that it's going to pay for itself. And it's definitely true with the card deals or the lounges. You're like, well, I'm going through an airport 5 times a month. I get the free coffee and a little cookie and the piece of cheese or whatever. But then half the time you're there and you want to go to like a place to eat anyway, right? Like Chili's is right there, right on your way to the F gates at O'Hare. And it's like, you know what, I'm just going to do that. And so the value proposition has to be real. I'd say the credit card lounges are more impressive than the airline ones right now.
Yeah.
we'll see how that develops. But
except for the Sky Club, the Delta Sky Club at LaGuardia is
I haven't tried that
best
one.
in class. That
Really?
one's ridiculous. Yeah, and then I feel like United's stepping up their game with
they
all
are
the ones at in Denver and at Newark are really, really good. So,
well, Pete, maybe on as we get into overcrowded airline clubs, now that you're back in private life, you're a private citizen. Like, you got to tell us what bothers you. What behaviors from your fellow citizens bothers you the most when you're traveling? And examples, we talk a lot about the gate lice, right? The people that just hang around the gate well before their boarding group is called. Maybe it's behavior on the flights, right? Somebody taking off their shoes or bum rushing the aisle when it's time to deplane. What are the behaviors that they really get under your skin?
Yeah, definitely just like what happens to the human brain when it comes to getting on or getting off a plane. Think about it. Like when it's time to get on the plane, you can't wait, where you got to be in your group number. You gotta like be the first, as if the inside of that airplane was the sweetest place on earth. And then you get to where you're going and the little bell rings and everybody's up and on their way out as if the airplane were on fire. And it's the same plane, right? And yeah, like maybe you got somewhere you need to be, but like you're probably going to be happier like reading your book or checking your phone for 5 minutes sitting in your seat while everybody gets ready to get out than standing there with your head like just under, the low ceiling. Like you're not making yourself. So there's something just weird about our like human behavior that comes out when it comes to getting on, getting off. But a related pet peeve, having said all that, the interrogators at the boarding, like the person who's like, are you group 2? Are you group? Is this the group? Are you group 2? Right? Because I'm group 2.
Did they call us yet? Are we supposed to be lining up?
Group 2 is the back of the bus now too.
It's one thing if somebody's like just does. I don't mean somebody who doesn't know where to go. I mean somebody who's like wants to personally verify that you are the right line. Right?
Yeah.
It's like let's just let it. If somebody is in 2 and they should have been in 3, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. But I also
group 2 is. I feel like group 2 is like the last group on the plane.
Yeah, they don't even get to. I mean, you got the pre-board strollers, military. Then you got the 1K or whatever it is, the super secret extra level that's before the top level.
Services.
Then there's group 1, which is like 2/3 of the plane. And I got to tell you, there's a culture thing here too, which I became aware of. So I was in Japan for a conference earlier this year, and to get back, we had to take a domestic flight from Kyoto, or I guess it's from Osaka to Tokyo. It's a 1-hour flight, 767. So there's enough people, even on this 1-hour short domestic flight, that they have a wide body. The flight was at 7:50 in the morning, and we're probably the only Americans there, looking around on this domestic Japanese flight in the lounge. Everybody's just sitting in their place. And I keep thinking, did we miss something? Because it's getting closer and closer to the time. They called boarding at 7:41. So this is a wide body. 9 minutes to board the entire plane. And you know what? Everybody lined up, came in, took a seat, and the plane was completely boarded. Everybody buckled up like well before those 9 minutes were up. And I just started thinking like, wow, okay, this isn't just procedure. This isn't just technology. This is culture. And we got to learn a little bit from the way they're doing things over there. But you know what?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, now that I'm back, like I'm traveling a lot, I'm realizing that actually my biggest travel pet peeves aren't about the airplane side of things. Like I think air travel, it's got its frustrations, but my new absolute biggest travel pet peeve is actually on the hotel side. And it's when you get to the hotel, you're probably tired, so you don't like get all your stuff out until the morning. You get up, you got to be somewhere. You go to iron your shirt. You're ironing your shirt, and suddenly you see your shirt's a little dirty. And then you realize, no, it's not dirty. It's that there's gunk on the iron, which is now it's not just you got dirt on your shirt that you can rinse off. This has been melted onto the iron by whoever was in the room before you. And now you have ironed it into the fabric of your shirt. It is not coming out. And of course, by definition, like you're on your way to something where you got to have a nice white shirt and you're probably late. And I just, why why would they let you be in that situation? That's my new. I'd say 1 out of 20 hotel rooms, this is happening to me, and you try to check, you try to be on guard against it. You put the iron on the highest possible setting, and you like rub it off to smudge anything, on the ironing board. But still, sometimes you're in a hurry, you forget to do that, and then you pay.
Are you pretty loyal from a hotel and airline perspective, or have you gotten more like whatever's most convenient?
I'm getting a little more opportunistic now because I just travel so much. And then there's a question: you're better off getting like mid-tier on 2 airlines versus going all the way on 1 airline. Just because of our geography, I think I'm probably on United the most often. But yeah, loyal might be a bit. I know that's like the term of art in the industry, but loyal might not be quite the right word to use for my relationship.
Are you loyal to O'Hare? Like you'll fly United or American out of there, or are you going down to Detroit?
No, Detroit's good too. I mean, that should have made my list actually. Like Detroit's
airport.
like a nice, pretty functional, soothing. Maybe soothing is a bit strong, but like, I don't know. It's just kind of level,
Yeah. It's really well laid out. I feel like everybody in there too, everybody that works that airport, they're all wearing running shoes because it's so long. And so I feel like they're all like active and in a good mood and just kind of with it. Just
now you mention it. And there's there's something about it. Also, probably the best hotel airport setup I've seen in the US is that Westin, right? They got, I don't know how they negotiated it, but they got that TSA checkpoint right in the lobby if you're traveling at a time of day when it's open, which turns out not to be always, but you're just right in there, and it's super convenient. So yeah, nothing against Detroit, but I'm gonna go O'Hare if I have if all things are equal.
Let me ask you this: does as people have bad experiences, typically with airlines, we see a lot of people take to social media to put said airline on blast. Pete, does that work at all? Do the airlines pay attention to people who complain about them on social media?
I think it can. Look, my advice, at least my professional advice when I was in office, was like, complain to the Department of Transportation. Like if you think, we set up this whole website, flightrights.gov. It's got a whole dashboard of red X's and green check marks on which airline will do this for you or not if you get stuck. And if they didn't do anything that's in their customer service plan, like that's a foul. That's a regulation, a violation. And you can get the department to follow up. I would hope that that continues. That's definitely how we did things when I was there. But look, do what gets you some kind of response. And so if you see that the airlines are like responding to people on social media and they don't want you to at them, I've noticed they do seem to be getting more proactive with compensation too. Like they'll take care of you on the spot with some dollars if they know that you're going to kick up a fuss online or just be mad at them. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend against it, but I think usually just emailing them and if they're not being responsive, emailing the department is probably the thing that's going to get you the best results. I had people try to email me. They guessed my email address and they'd CC me. And sometimes they'd like guess the address of the CEO of American Airlines or something. I would say that not going to get you very good results. Like, so it's just like, I'm not going to go through these screenshots that you sent and in my my personal email. But there's definitely a lot of ways to get your issue dealt with.
All right, folks, jumping in one more time to thank our other sponsor today, and that is Holderness Bourne. Listen, as fall is quickly approaching, I want to talk about some new colors that H&B has in their collections. They have new colors in the Harwood short, both Ivy and Andover. They have shorts quickly becoming their best seller. They're versatile for off-course too. Check those out. Their Amherst colorway, it's like a soft purple, a really nice color. They have that throughout the collection. The Bedford colorway is a soft dusty blue. The Cape colorway is a faded coral. The Maxwell shirt, this iconic peak style, it's great in heat. It's updated with a couple of those new colors, the Cape Andover, the Amherst Bedford, the heathered Amherst and white. They're all really nice. And it's never too early to start thinking about a little cashmere. I think that's something that I would perhaps like to add to my collection at some point. So I mentioned the shorts a little bit. You can check out their shorts. They are really, really comfortable. Like I said, great for on the golf course, great for off the golf course. All of this is at hbgolf.com. And when you're there, you can use the code TRAP10, TRAP10, TRAP10. This and our NLU discount code, they're the only ones on the market at Holderness and Bourne. So get on over hbgolf.com, use code TRAP10 for 10% off your first order. We thank Holderness and Bourne for being a great sponsor.
What does that look like? Like from a process perspective, there's a whole office within Department of Transportation that
there's like 15 people, or there were. I don't know if Elon fired them all, but they were really good public servants when I was there. About half lawyers, half non-lawyers, and their entire day revolved around developing rules and enforcing them. And we did big, we did more than $100 million enforcement action over that whole Southwest debacle. And we had another investigation in Southwest. I think the new administration killed it, but it was about realistic scheduling. Like these were like good people who understood how to like get these airlines to respond. A lot of times we would do it in the context of a settlement, but as a tough negotiator, you could get the airlines to do that without having to take them to court and have a lawsuit. Although the airlines did sue us. And this was over a rule. I still can't believe this. It wasn't even a rules regulating their fees. It was just saying that they had to tell you what the fees were before you paid. And they sued us over that. So, sometimes they're really going to put up a fight. Other times they'll go along with it. But yeah, it's down to this. It's called the Office of Aviation Consumer Protection, OACP. A great example of like unsung people in the federal government doing good work who, don't have their names out there. These are not like faceless bureaucrats. These are people who like get results for passengers. And one of the best parts of my job was empowering them with a little more. I gave them a little more cover to do good work and to really push the airlines. And passengers got results like billions of dollars back in their pockets because of the work that this like, small but mighty team did.
It seems pretty bipartisan too.
I think so. It ought to be. I mean, again, I have a partisan fight with my successor right now over the.
I was going to say some of that being rolled back.
Yeah. So my successor was an airline lobbyist, so he probably has a bit of a different outlook on the industry than I do. We were working on a rule to compensate passengers. This is already true in a lot of parts of the world: Canada, Europe, UK, Brazil. If you get an extreme delay and it's the airline's fault, they don't just have to take care of your sandwich or whatever. They actually have to compensate you for wasting your time. So we launched a process to do that, and the current administration just got rid of it. They also, I think, like I said, got rid of this enforcement work on Southwest, and I think they've filed a bunch of paperwork, which is really dense and a little hard to interpret. But it seems to be a signal that they are considering getting rid of some of the other rules we put in place around how you can get compensated as a passenger if they screw up your bag or if there's a delay, kind of loosening some of the definitions there to be more in favor of the airlines and less in favor of the passengers. But, this is one of those things. I still think you're right that it's bipartisan, maybe not in Washington, but like just out in the country, like I'm sure a lot of folks listening to this, like might not like vote with my party most of the time, but definitely want to be protected as passengers. And if you go to the trouble of weighing in, like any federal regulation, there's a process to make your voice heard. The airline lobbyists definitely use it. So you should too. I think it all goes through regulations.gov, which sounds made up, but that's a real website that you can use when there's a proposal to change any of these regulations, and say what you think about it. Put it on the record.
It seems like too that, I mean, if there's one similarity between members of Congress, is that they all fly a lot back and forth. And so that's why it seems like whether it's Republican or Democrat, up there grilling airline execs, it seems like it's a pretty united front on like, hey, you made the flying experience miserable. Let's talk.
Yeah, I mean, we had when we were doing the bill to reauthorize the FAA, which included passenger protection provisions like this automatic refund rule. We were trying to do it on our own, but it's a lot easier if Congress makes it into law directly. And I got to tell you, there were some people in the Senate who I would agree with, like less than 2% of the time, who helped rescue that, who like were with us on that to get it done. So I think you're right. I think people get it. Look, when you eat what you cook, like you just get it at a different level. And there's a lot of people in most of the people in power, like really have to use their imagination to think about what it's like to depend on food stamps or to know how much is on the line if your access to Head Start falls through, or so many of these policy issues that really matter. But yeah, when it comes to airlines, usually when I say the phrase "everyone's an expert," I might sound sarcastic, but like everyone really is an expert on kind of how these transportation things work out for them, and you see that reflected, I think, in the attention people pay to airline policy.
What like the Delta meltdown? What last year was that? Last year?
Yeah, I think 2 years ago now. Yeah, I'm still mad about that one.
What does that look like? Like when that happens, is there like a control center where you're like, all right, like this is going to turn into a shit show. I'm heading down to the control center. I got to get Ed Bastian on the phone now. To figure out what this looks like.
That literally happened. I mean, we're seeing, because, you know, we have a little ticker of the complaints that are coming in, and FAA knows every day how many flights are delayed. I would always keep an eye on it, especially after that Southwest meltdown. Say, okay, that seems a little high. My goal was to have the system be well under 2% in terms of cancellations. Anytime even one airline was ahead of that, I would probably notice. But those things kind of snowball, right? The really bad ones, they get worse. I mean, what you expect to see is there's a storm or a glitch, and as you get further and further into the day, it gets screwed up more and more for more and more people. And then the new day comes. Everything kind of resets and things are on their way back to normal. And by day 2, or definitely by day 3, you're better. Where you really start worrying is when the opposite happens. It happened with Southwest, and it happened with Delta. And that one I'm still mad about because, you know, I literally we got to get Ed Bastian on the phone. And it took a while. And when we did, he was in Paris because he was going to the Olympics or something. Yeah. And I mean, this is like well into the crisis. Yeah. And later on, he was complaining that he said the temperature was going up in the airports because I had gone on TV talking about how important it was for Delta to take care of their customers. I was trying to explain to them, like, you know, the temperature went up because Delta failed its customers, not because the Secretary of Transportation got involved. Yeah, sorry, that one I'm still mad about. And it was and then they have this back and forth with Microsoft, which I think they're still fighting over it because Microsoft was able to show that Ed or somebody at Delta never got back to them when they reached out. But then there's a counter argument from Delta, which thankfully I still care about this stuff, but because it's not my job anymore, I don't follow the blow by blow. Yeah, some of these things make me mad as a passenger, and some of them definitely made me mad as a regulator.
Well, it was truly one of those things too, where like I think there was a single point of failure with this obscure company that handles, you know, one of the back end things within the Microsoft ecosystem or whatever. And it was like, oh yeah, like all of that had been consolidated down and no competition, and everybody just uses this one company.
I'm telling you, when you don't have competition, and I get it, right? In these like networked systems, especially when it touches a government system, like you get less and less of a normal market, like the market for peanut butter or something, and more of the problems that happen in spaces like transportation, like utilities, like healthcare, where, you know, the market forces just aren't left alone. They're not enough.
Yeah. Back to the, like, I guess kind of the control center or whatever, like what is from a TSA perspective? I mean, is that just like TSA and no fly list and all that? Like, how does that work? Like how many people get placed on the no fly list a day, and do all of those come through your desk as transportation secretary?
No. So, you know, TSA started out during the Bush administration as a response to 9/11. And so they grew it inside of the Department of Transportation. But then when they set up Homeland Security, they moved it over there. Okay. So that stuff was less likely to cross my desk. We'd work with them. The biggest thing we did that had to do with TSA probably was we took a lot of the dollars out of the infrastructure bill, and we used them to make physical improvements at airports to make the checkpoints line up better. Because the geometry of most of our airports was set up pre 9/11, right? So anything you see in so many of the big airports like O'Hare is kind of grafted on. Unless you have a terminal that was built from scratch. I mean, the extreme example is probably Kansas City, where the old one, there were all these little checkpoints, and you could just pull up right next to your gate, kind of almost get out of your car, go through and be there. And that wasn't working. So the new airport, they were able to build on a new plan that accounts for what it's like in the 2020s. Anyway, we were able to kind of fund some of the physical spaces so that the checkpoints were arranged in a better way. But the actual, you know, checking the rules, all of that was very much on the Homeland Security side of the house. But I definitely appreciate the people who do that work, because they've been through a lot, and we count on them. And you know, when it's the other thing I was thinking about, I was in Seattle a couple of weeks ago, and it was like a brutally early flight. I think I got to the airport at like a little bit before 4 a.m. or something like that. And so none of the pre-check was up. There was just one checkpoint that was up. You couldn't do pre-check. You couldn't do all this stuff. And I was just standing in line for, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes thinking about how this feels like an imposition now, but only if we forget that like that was like table stakes before, like standing in a long line, at least half an hour, and having it feel different from airport to airport if you had to empty your bag or not, all that stuff. That was just the baseline. Now, like, a frequent traveler often would notice if it was more than 10 minutes, right? That's amazing. Like, we can talk about the things that have gotten worse or that are frustrating, but you compare this to as recently as when I was, I don't know, going to college, the like fluid nature of what it's like to get through security in most airports most of the time, pretty dramatic change.
I feel like the one except those analogic machines, those seem to take like twice as long as the other, branded machines. Where do you fall out on like clear pre-check and even like Seattle? They've got that space saver, or like where you can basically pre-check in for your place in line.
Yeah, I was trying to figure that out, and I didn't have the brain power at 4 a.m. to interpret the signage around that or sign up for anything. But yeah, look, still a bit of a hodgepodge. I think the pre-check program has generally worked well, right? If you're a frequent traveler, it's worth the fee, and your credit card might pay for it anyway. It really moves things through. Then you got the facial recognition stuff. I'm okay with it. There's a lot of things where I'm skeptical or suspicious of the federal government, but them knowing what my face looks like, given how many like companies I don't trust know what my face looks like, even if I wasn't the face that maybe a lot of people know, like I think that's like well worth it in order to get through that kind of friction. Clear, I think it really depends where you are. I think some airports you're like, wait a minute, like did this? And did I still had to show somebody something? Like, what did this do for me? Others, DCA on the right day, you can sail past with clear. Yeah, I think the jury's still out on how and where that works for you. But I definitely think pre-check's been a big advance. Now, the next level and stuff that I saw demonstrated, the newer technologies will make that seem pretty quaint. And that's where it does get a little big brothery and a bit creepy. But you look at how systems can just know who's where without you having to bother to even talk to a TSA agent. Like, you just come in, and if you're in the system, the airport knows who you are. I think we're a long way from not having to go through a checkpoint, but that's theoretically possible if these systems develop the way the technology is pretty much already capable of. We just got to figure out a way to do it that's not terrifying from a privacy perspective.
Yeah. Well, Tron, unless you object, I might change gears a little bit and ask, Pete, I think from your time as mayor of South Bend, probably just roadways and highways and bridges is also a big deal. I was going to say not only in that capacity in a smaller town a little bit, but also as transportation secretary. I guess my first question would be, I'm so curious as I see, especially out here in Denver where I live, the proliferation of electric vehicles. Do you think we'll get a cohesive, efficient kind of electric car grid system across the country anytime soon? Are you optimistic about that?
Yeah, I think it's coming. Look, I'm less optimistic about the speed of it than I was when we were working on it. I mean, this is a big part of what I worked on at DOT, and a little bit misunderstood. Our goal was, we were kind of hoping and expecting, if we got our policies right, that roughly half of the car sales in 2030 would be electric. And so as you get closer and closer to 2030, you need more of a charging network out there. We thought we should use federal dollars to help, especially in places where the market alone wasn't going to do it because it was more low income, or you were really spread out, and you weren't going to see those chargers pencil out for the companies putting them in. Then we should have some kind of federal support. But we made some choices that we knew would mean that it would take longer. Probably the biggest one was to require that they be made in America. So if you're getting these taxpayer dollars to put this charger in, got to have the American components. We knew that would slow things down by a year or two. But we thought, okay, if most of these chargers are going in 2026, 27, we're still well ahead of that 2030 goal. I don't know how much, new administration, obviously not as big on electric vehicles. But, most of the money went out through the states. And what I found is even very conservative states, they saw the benefit of this. And a lot of conservative friends are driving EVs, right? I think this doesn't have to be a political or partisan thing, especially as the price point.
Texas. Texas is a perfect example.
Yeah.
They have such a good charging network down there, relatively speaking.
Yeah. And, Tesla really pioneered a lot of that because they understood pretty quick that their business model meant people really needed to have those questions settled around cars. And Texas makes sense too, because you just drive a lot in your day-to-day life, right? And so kind of a very natural place for EVs compared to where you're doing like very short trips. And so, I think it's coming. I think the thing people still don't always realize is that for most users, not all, but for most drivers, charging your car is going to have more in common with charging your phone than filling up your car at the gas station. In other words, most, like 80% of it's going to be at home or at work. And a lot of that charging can happen while you're at sleep, which is just different from, going to the gas station and putting gas in your tank and going and getting a candy bar and a cup of coffee and being on your way. But that other 20% really matters, right? And that's why the network has to be there. We're starting to see convergence on the actual connector, right? We've been living through this kind of like VHS versus beta moment. I don't know how old your median listener is. Maybe you have to like look that up, like what that meant. Google it, kids. But we're still in a bit of that, but we're converging on probably a common connector, which makes things just a lot easier instead of having to like look up which charger matches my car. So I think it's coming. And look, it'd be one thing if the EV technology was a greener car, but a worse engine, but it's a better engine. Like it's better torque, it's better pickup, better acceleration. So once things reach the point where it's a better price, which will come, then I think that the rest, nature will take its course. We believed when I was in office that there was value in trying to speed that up. But I think it's going to happen because there's better vehicles. And, ultimately a lower total cost of ownership. Yeah.
Where do hybrids fit in?
That's what we do. So
hybrids
I mean, that's at a household level. That's what we do. We have our car. We have a minivan that's a plug-in hybrid. And so for getting to school, getting to Target, getting to the mall, getting to our friend's house, it's pretty much an EV as long as we remember to plug it in at night in the garage. And, if we're going on a road trip, then it's a gas car and we don't have to think about chargers. Now we second, we had to have two cars again once I left the last job. And we got a Jeep, same thing. And it's awesome. Like you don't have any of the worry about like guzzling through tons of gas because it's electric for, I don't know, a good 30 or 40 miles off the plug-in, maybe closer to 20 or 30, but enough for my like daily routine.
I was gonna say that's probably what 80% of.
Yeah. And then if I'm going to go somewhere, if I'm going to Chicago or something, I'll, or back to South Bend, then it might as well be a gas car. So I think for a lot of people, for their pattern of life, it makes sense. And the other thing is I think it just helps people get used to the whole thing, right? Because there is this anxiety, even though very, very few people are routinely driving more than like 300 miles in a day, which is the range of a lot of the EVs. You still feel that like I wouldn't want to be caught without an option. And, these plug-in hybrids are a good answer to that.
How much does the condition of our roads bubble up to the federal level? I mean, was that on your plate? Like totally. As far as just construction and maintaining roads and highways, does that rise to your office?
Yeah, the bigger the highway, the more likely that was to happen. So the federal government doesn't own and operate highways outside of maybe a military base or certain federal lands. But when you get into the federal highway system, which is operated by states, so if you're on whatever I-80, that is day to day, it's your state highway department that's handling that. But that's all federal formula funds. Huge part of what's making all that possible. So, the single biggest category, there's a lot of like fighting after the fact over what exactly we were like putting infrastructure dollars into. The biggest category was bridges and roads and highways. And what we would do is if there was a city that was trying to do a big project, especially a safety project that was going to improve roads, then we would fund it. or we could fund it. They could apply for grants in a competitive process, and we could fund it. And then the day-to-day formula money, that went straight to the states, and they had their own plans. They had to file it with the federal government, but the federal government wasn't sitting around picking which projects they would do with that formula money. Just made sure that it was legal the way they spent the money. So yeah, that was, I mean, in dollar terms, the single biggest thing we worked on was roads and highways. Now, that doesn't mean that the federal government has the answer for a community with a pothole problem. And I know what that's like, because, Northern Indiana, that climate, like that freeze thaw cycle is brutal on asphalt. And I dealt with that a lot when I was mayor. But it can help sometimes. And the other thing that this is my kind of nerdy pursuit that I still think we could do so much more with, is federal research on pavement durability. I don't know, I don't want to go all the way down a rabbit hole here, but just think about the difference that it makes, like dollar wise, as well as convenience wise. If you lay down some asphalt in a place with a lot of snow and ice, like where I live, and you can get it to last 11 years instead of 8 years, like that's a massive, massive win in terms of everything from the bottom line to just the convenience of it. There's even something called a pothole tax, which is the invisible, the fact that everybody pays for a road that's rough because of the damage it does to your car. It's this invisible tax, which is one of the reasons why it's better to come up with the funds to make sure your road's in good shape.
How do you prioritize? Are there certain projects that are going to even have like a demonstrable effect on national efficiency? Like whether it's a massive interchange or like a bridge between two states. Like I think of the Brent Spence Bridge down on I-75 in Cincinnati.
There's some places where
a ticking time bomb, and we need to fix this and get these two states together.
Absolutely. There are places where it matters to the level that, like, you could be sitting in a national policy role working through supply chain problems for the whole country, and you would notice if there was a problem in one place. On the rail front, that's true, the Hudson tunnels in the New York area, which is why they're getting so much funding. But on the road side, your example of the Brent Spence Bridge that connects Ohio to Kentucky is a good one. The interstate bridge replacement that needs to happen in Washington and Oregon is a good example, I-5. That bridge, I've walked it, and we funded it. But they're still working to put those dollars to use. I mean, you feel the bridge like rocking in the wind. It's, to be clear, it's supposed to, but you can also tell that there's this massive counterweight over your head of like hundreds of tons of concrete that makes it possible for the bridge to come up. And if a sailboat comes through, I-5 is shut down while that bridge goes up, and then it comes back down. And the obvious answer is to have a no moving parts bridge, which is what we supported them doing. There's one between Superior, Wisconsin, and Duluth, Minnesota, the Blatnick Bridge, which is another one of the biggest ones that we funded. So, and the thing I'd say is, it's not just the ticking time bomb thing. Like, you obviously need to make sure that the bridge is never in danger of collapsing, but well before that, you could have a problem with the bridge that means that for safety, you have to signpost it saying no trucks, or even ambulances or school buses are too heavy to go on it. And that's a massive issue, right? In terms of efficiency, or even emergency response if an ambulance has to reroute. So I thought that was a great use of funds in terms of prioritizing. We looked at supply chain impacts. Safety was always the number one thing. So usually when you have a bridge or road design from 60 years ago or 80 years ago, it's probably not as safe as what we have now. We thought a lot about fairness. You're not supposed to say equity these days, I guess, but that's what we were thinking about if a road, especially if you're in like a neighborhood or a community that just got repeatedly screwed over because it was a minority or low income or rural area, then we cared about that. And if they could show that in their application, that would make a difference. Milwaukee has a big project on 6th Street. Just I think it actually got withdrawn in the latest budget, but we funded it because it was a safety improvement that also went to a part of Milwaukee that was not being treated right over the last few decades. So that's something we cared about. So I think the best projects are the ones that do a lot of things at the same time. There's a fairness benefit, there's a safety benefit, there's an economic benefit, there's a climate benefit. If you got less starting and stopping, you got less pollution. All of those things add up into a great project. And I loved, cutting the ribbons, or even just like going through the application, seeing the ideas that people would come up with. And these were never designed by the federal government. It was always the community or the state or the city said, we need this. Can you get us some money? And one of the best things about my job is sometimes the answer was yes.
Do you think rail travel will grow in this country? I ask, I guess, in two different senses. One, a big built out commuter type rail system connecting major population centers to one another. And then I guess maybe hand in hand with that, again, being here in Denver, I-70, especially in the winter, is a mess. People trying to get up into the mountains, go skiing. Everybody, I wish there was train travel you could take to some of these ski resorts. Do you think, are you bullish on rail travel? Do you think it will grow in this country, or is it kind of like, yeah, it is what it is?
For the long run, yeah. I mean, I just don't think. Look, we are a country that like weirdly has just fallen out of step on rail in the last 50 years, but we're also a proud country that I think wants to have the best of everything. And so, the idea that you have to go to another country to experience the highest level of passenger rail, I don't think that sits right with most of us in America. And the national high speed network might be a long way off, but I think the thing that's really going to turn the tide on high speed is to just actually experience it here. So the one to watch that's probably going to have the quickest results is a project which we funded, but it's private sector led, to connect Las Vegas to Southern California. It's called Bright Line West. And what's exciting about that is that if they hit their marks and deliver that high speed rail by the end of this decade, then it won't just be like your uncle came back from Japan and is like, why can't we have nice things? It's like your buddy just got back from Vegas and is like, why can't we have nice things? I'm just convinced once we have one American butt in a seat on US soil doing real high-speed rail, there's going to be no going back. And then we'll start seeing it go to geographies. I'd say any place with lots of very short flights or annoying long drives are great candidates for rail. So that's the Midwest, right? And Texas too. And a lot of other places around the country, some of which are more conservative, some of which are not. But the point is, like, you shouldn't have to live in the New York tri-state area to think about rail being something that would make you better off.
On a similar note, but different mode of transportation, where does the FAA stand right now on like all the eVTOL stuff and just all the like drone delivery, and like it just seems like there's this whole world that's about to pop on that front, and where are we at on that right now?
Yeah, I don't think people realize how big of a revolution these drones and the eVTOLs are, the vertical takeoff and landing. They basically start out as a helicopter, turn into a plane, and they're all electric. This can be a really disruptive and I think potentially really positive development. So we made sure that we completed some of the biggest regulatory things that had to happen. By the time I left, I'm sure, I think this is pretty bipartisan, so I'm sure FAA is continuing to work on that right now. And you think about drone deliveries, I mean, there's so many places that are remote and it's just too expensive or too hard to get people things. I mean, definitely, when I was on the job, I went to every state. In Alaska, there are places where there's literally no road. So the only way you're getting anything is either by air or by sea. And or maybe snowmobile. And changing that and drone deliveries can give people medications. I mean, the possibility is huge. The problem, of course, is if you're adding like millions and millions of things to the airspace, how do you manage that? And there's a lot of technology to do it, but this is very different than the way we manage, a flight with a pilot talking to an air traffic controller. And we got to make sure that tech is safe. But I'm excited about that. We'll see that the eVTOL makers have made really big claims, like that they would be competitive with a Uber XL to get you from, Manhattan to JFK at a comparable price point and literally be competing with taxis. I want to actually see that. But what if that is true? I mean, think about what that would mean, what that would make possible.
Yeah. Well, we just have a few more minutes here. So one thing I was curious about, Pete, if you don't mind, with a little bit of reflection here, I'm curious both what you are most proud of from your time as department secretary, and also, is there one thing that kind of sticks with you, like, I wish I could have done more in this one area?
Yeah, I think on the second question, it's just getting things built quicker. So we got about 20,000 projects done. Pretty sure that's an all-time record for a Secretary of Transportation. But we funded about 70,000, and they're all in various stages of completion. I see one of them just about every day right here in Traverse City, Michigan. I get that they take time, but I think we could do more as a country to make these things quicker, to make sure that the red tape and some of the regulatory and permitting and political barriers are under control, so the project can just get done. I think there's
some of that just like NIMBYism of like, people just
there's that
process locally, or
a lot of it is like a very understandable political thing that happens, which is that there's more fear of a project going wrong than fear of the opportunity cost of the project not happening at all. There's just so many people whose job is to make sure that the project doesn't go wrong, making sure it doesn't miss this or that like regulatory hurdle or embarrass somebody or whatever. And some of that pressure is good, but if that becomes more important than somebody who gets up in the morning thinking about making sure it happens on time, then they become more expensive, and then you can't do as many projects. As far as what I'm proudest of, there's three things, and we talked a lot about two of them. One of them is the passenger protections. Like, I'm proud of the fact that when we came in, it was so frustrating as a passenger. You couldn't get your money back from an airline. You couldn't get taken care of when you got stuck. And we changed all of that. And now it looks like it's going to be a fight to keep it that way, but we changed so much of that. That's one. Two is all the projects that we did get done, and all the funding that we put in after years of both parties saying, we just can't quite make it happen. And then we got it done. By the way, it's bipartisan. We had a lot of Republicans teaming up with Democrats to get the votes. And we got that done. So I'm proud of that. The third thing, though, that I think is one of the most important things we worked on that no one talks about is the safety side. So on the aviation front, we had something like 4 billion passenger enplanements times somebody got on a commercial airline flight just in the time that I was there, and 0 crash fatalities on those commercial airliners. If we just think about what that means as a civilizational achievement, what it took to maintain that, and what you just think, you just wouldn't think the law of large numbers would even allow that to be possible. But it is, and it's been done. And it's incredible. Like the simple fact, we like to complain, and I really cared a lot about making it better. But the simple fact that I think it was Louis, the comedian, who pointed out, like, you're sitting in a chair in the sky, like that's really something.
Going 500 or 600 miles an hour.
Yeah. In a metal tube being propelled by flammable liquids, miles over the surface of the earth, and you're just sitting there like checking Instagram like it's nothing, So anyway, the safety improvements also on the roadways. So long way to go, long way to go. But one other weird thing about human psychology is we all pay a lot of attention if there's definitely an aviation safety problem, or one of these terrible incidents that's happened on a lot of the other modes of transportation. But it's like not even news when there's a car crash. We lose about 150 people a day, like between 100 and 150 a day. Like all of us know people who got killed in car crashes, and that's kind of like, we're kind of like a society that has been where people grew up in a war or something, and we don't feel like it's not normal. It's not normal. Like, it doesn't have to be that way. 40,000 is way too many lives to lose. And we didn't solve it, but we improved it to the tune of potentially thousands of lives just in the time that I was in office. So that's one of those things, didn't get a lot of press, maybe because like no one's against it in principle, but it took a lot of work, like including, some regulations that weren't popular on what cars need to do to be safer, but that I think were worth it. And a lot of other things. So I think the safety thing is huge. I think the passenger protections I'm very proud of, and then just getting some projects done that have been, waiting their turn for a very long time.
Do you think there's a solution to, because I'm sure a growing percentage of an already large percentage is due to texting and driving or just cell phones?
Yes.
Are you optimistic on that front that there's going to be something done there? Because it's like, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it's a huge problem. Like, if the car is in drive, your phone should not be in your hands, period. And I think a lot of folks just struggle with that. And so distracted driving has taken its place alongside drunk driving as a cause of injuries and deaths. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I think the tech companies could do more. I think the mobile companies could do more. I think the car companies could do more, but also like all of us need to just, it needs to become socially, like socially, drinking and driving like really changed like during, like for our generation, like during our lifetime.
Yeah.
I think whether people like kind of seemed cool by blowing off how important that was versus now where you just don't, for the most part. I think we got to go through similar kind of cultural turnaround on distracted driving. But of course, the other thing that I'm optimistic about is the tech around safety really is getting better to either prompt drivers to be safe or to just take over, right? I mean, look, we're already at the point where in a lot of scenarios, the self-driving car is safer than the average driver. The problem is the average driver thinks they're a better driver than the average driver.
Yeah, everybody's an above average driver. Well, Pete, maybe we'll get you out of here with this question. What is keeping you busy these days? What has your interest? And as you look ahead over the next few years, I'm sure that's a question you get a lot. Where does your mind go in terms of what you want to do?
I mean, obviously, I care a lot about politics and public policy. I'm traveling the country, speaking out on that. I'm thinking about writing a book. But honestly, the other thing that's taken up my everything I've got right now is just being a dad. We've got twins. They turned 4 this summer. And it's just such a roller coaster. I now understand why there's all these cliches around parenting. It's very hard to explain or describe without just lapsing into cliches. But we've entered this new and kind of hilarious stage with them where they just, you can talk to them and they're funny, but they're still kind of crazy. Unfortunately, we're also in the accident prone stage. Like we had an ER visit because our daughter was jumping on her bed and went like head first into the side of the bed and needed stitches on her head. And then we just put him to bed when I found out that our son wasn't bluffing when he said he got a bead so far up his nose that he couldn't get it out. And that was a trip to urgent care. And it's just like a lot of that kind of thing going on. So between that and just getting them, getting their lunch and backpacks and getting them out the door in the morning, like that's any ounce of capacity I have that's not going into, worrying about the future of AI and public policy or thinking about how my political party can be more successful or just traveling around speaking to crowds. That's taken more than 100% of what I've got left.
Well, we really, really do appreciate the conversation. Thank you for making time. Like I said, I think these are issues sometimes we joke about, but they're real issues and they affect pretty much everybody listening to some extent. So they're very important things, I think, to talk about. And yeah, thank you, and enjoy the fall up there in northern Michigan. It's one of my favorite places.
All the tourists clearing out.
Yeah,
you get your city back. Yeah,
it's the best. I mean, I'm not sure how to feel about the leaves already starting to turn mid-September here, but no, I'm looking forward to it. Take care. Thanks a lot for having me on.
To a Modern Bird, the restaurant.
Oh my God, it's so good. So
my
good.
buddy Andy is the chef, and
no kidding. We know him.
They're killing. I think they just got honored in the New York Times last week for
is that right? Good. They deserve it. That place is fantastic. They're expanding upstairs. It's gonna be even harder to get a table there now that you shouted them out. But that's a great spot.
Good spot. Yeah. Thanks, Pete.
Take care.
All right.